All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, welcome to Algebra 1. I'll be your voice for today, Mr. Hess. I apologize if you can't hear this very well. I don't have my microphone with me today. Had a big karaoke party this weekend and forgot to bring it into school. Sorry about that. Forgot to bring it in and record this thing. So, here we go. Function notation picks up on what you were a little bit on Friday. You were writing functions on Friday, and I just wanted you to be familiar with this weird f of x notation, or in this case, look at this, g of x. You can pick any letter you want to be the function. And we saw on Friday and also on Thursday, sometimes there's context to that, like temperature or something that you might add to that. This is really just getting you comfortable with the notation, which is why the title has the word notation in it. So, again, f of x is just a fancy, it's not f times x, it's not two different variables. This is just a fancy looking y, and you could say this is also a fancy looking y. Here's one of the reasons we use this notation. If I call this y and I call this y, you might not see them as two different things. I want you to understand that f is a linear function over here, and g is a nonlinear function. It's got a cubic term in there, so that's something with an exponent to the third power. So this is linear and this is nonlinear, and I can just say, hey, f is linear and g is not linear. And I can say that with one letter as opposed to the first one or the second one and having this be a y. So there's one reason they use different letters for functions. You don't have to just call them both y equals something. You can actually pick a different letter on there. This is one of the small reasons, many different reasons to do it. So now we get to the actual questions on here. You're looking at this and you have no idea what is this garbage. Does this mean f times 6? No, don't do f times 6. This is not g times 2. This is basically an input-output. This is telling you what to input and where to input it. Take the 6 and input it into function f. This is saying take a 2 and input it into function g. So up here you see f of x, where x is actually the input or where you input it. This is telling you what to input. This is saying take the 6 and input it into that equation wherever you see an x. It's the same thing we did the first week of school with substituting things into equations. So just take that 6 and multiply it by -2 and then subtract 7. Anytime you see f of something here, f of, it's saying take whatever the input is, whatever's inside the parentheses, and just punch it into the equation and do whatever the equation says. This function says multiply by -2, subtract 7 from it. So take the 6, multiply it by -2, 6 times 2 is 12, and it should be negative, and then subtract 7. -12 minus 7 is -19. Beautiful. So that's sort of the gist of it. This is a great time to pause, and I encourage you guys throughout this video, I do talk quickly, to pause, rewind, and play it again. I do it all the time. When I watch TV at home now, I constantly am hitting the rewind button on the TV, constantly rewinding and hearing things again and going, wait, did I just hear that correctly? Whether it's the news or a sports show or whatever the heck it is, I just want to hear it again and again and again just to make sure I got it right the first time. I encourage you to take advantage of the technology. If you asked me to repeat myself in class over and over again, I'd probably go crazy, Conrad. However, here you can make me repeat myself over and over and over again to make sure I said it right the first time. So, good time to pause and use the technology and try these three on your own. If you think you're really courageous and you want to go beyond these three, these are a little bit messier, and that's really messy. You're going to love that. But go for it. So this one's saying, and I'm going to keep talking, but I recommend you pause and try it on your own. Take the 2, plug it into both of these spots. Anywhere you see an x, that's a place to input it. And input it into function g. So we know PEMDAS says we're going to do our exponent first and then multiply by 5. So it's not 2 times 5 and get 10 and then do 10 times 10 times 10. No. 2 times 2 times 2, and then we multiply by 5. And when we're done with that, we add 2 to that, because we're inputting a 2, and we add 1 to that. So 2 times 2 times 2, of course, is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. 40 plus 2 plus 1 is, of course, 43. Hopefully you guys got that on your own. The third one on here is back to f. We're going to input -3 into function f. So there's my input, and there's where it goes. It goes into function f. -3 times -2, negative times a negative. Positive, it's a positive. Positive 6. And 6 minus 7 is -1. I hope you got that on your own. You're loving it. And then we get down to the bottom one, which is really just recognizing how to plug a negative in when you have exponents. So we're plugging into g. Plug in -1. You get -1 times -1 times -1. which amazingly is -1. And -1 times 5 is -5. And the last part of this is actually really nice. What's -1 plus 1? -1 plus 1 is nothing. That cancels out at 0. So that part cancels, and you just get the beginning part you have to worry about. So we said the beginning part, of course, was -5. I'm not really showing a lot of work on these three because I'm hoping it's kind of mental math to some extent. And certainly if you have a calculator in front of you, you can punch the numbers in there and let that help you. All right, these are a little messier. Here we inputted numbers. Certainly in algebra class, we can input variables. And all this is saying is take the m and input it in for wherever you see an x. So instead of this being -2x, this is now -2 times m. And we can't simplify. You just leave it like that. And you might want to do more with that, but don't. That's it. You're done. -2m minus 7, you can't simplify anything. These next two you will be able to simplify a little bit. So this one's just like it, but you're going to input m plus 2. And again, if you think of this function in terms of what it does in words, this function multiplies something by -2 and then subtracts 7 from it. So you're going to plug this stuff in and multiply it by -2. So -2m. And -2 times 4, sorry, -2 times 2 is -4, and then subtract 7 from it. And like I said a minute ago, you can simplify part of this. You can combine these like terms. And -4 minus 7, of course, is -11, and now you're done. So you can't do anything else. You can't combine it anymore. You're still going to have a variable in your answer, just like you often have in many algebra questions. So go to these next two. I'm going to pause this video and go to the next section, because if I go beyond 6.5 minutes, 7 minutes, I lose the whole recording. So keep going, try those last two, and come back in a moment.